Very fun map. Did I get first victor on this? This released like an hour and a half ago, but looks like I missed the mark there. Yeah, 169. I do think this is a hard demon. There are a few small little things that upped my attempt total there. Like, there was one time in practice mode, for some reason the level just was impossible. There were structures that were in the wrong spots. I don't know how that happened. It only happened once, but that was weird. And also, one thing I will mention is that if you die after the song cut, if you die in the second half of the level, pretty much, when you die and go back to the start, the song is off sync. It's playing the wrong part of the song at the beginning of the level. So you have to exit out and reopen the level, which I know that this level is not in its perfectly finished state, because I think Vayulena had to slightly rush the level out due to the contest deadline. So I would expect some of the things I'm going to mention as critiques as, intentional oversights, because they couldn't get the level fully fleshed out in time. And I do expect there to be updates. I think Vayulena said in their level description that there will be updates to this. They just had to get it out now because of the contest results, which is entirely fair. But to start, I think that the theme is cool. I do really like the characterization of the time machine as a train. I think there are certain parts themed around train stations, and with the little time clocks and stuff worked into the deco. I think those parts are really cool, and I think that the destinations chosen were pretty solid, but I think that there's not necessarily enough of that train through line. There are certain transitions between parts that don't really have much thematic, or much of the theme as a part of the transitions, and I think that I would have liked to see the theme worked into the transitions a bit more, especially like those middle parts where it's like you're in the time machine core. Like, I don't see how that relates to anything, but in general, it's a neat choice of setting. The jam attack contest for the jam gauntlet, you need to pick a setting and have the character collect a gem at the end, and the setting here is a time machine, which allows for a lot of different experimentation with different scenes. I will say that Vayulena's texture style is definitely more catered towards realism, and it's cool to see them try a different art style with their way of texturing. If you look at levels like Space Invaders or Hallucinate, those have a lot more like realism. Ascension to Walmart as well. Those are more like realism type of art levels. This is a different type of art style, and I think that their texturing works pretty well in certain parts. Like the first two scenes, like the Viking scene, and then I think the medieval scene. There's only a real, one thing that I think was an oversight because of the level not having proper time to be fleshed out is, I think the Viking part of the first part that the second part of the level, sorry, let me make it simple. The second part of the level has this sort of like introduction card as to what time period you're in, but that's not present in any other part. And I think that that's just one of those details that got left on the cutting room floor because the level had to get pushed out in a fast amount of time. But I think that those parts have pretty solid texturing. I think that Vayulena's style works well there. In other parts, like specifically the prehistoric part, I think that the overall rock usage is not very polished there. It's rock textures making up objects that are also supposed to be rocks, and I just think it's not very detailed. It's kind of clunky, and I do think that part is a bit of a weak point in terms of decoration. And another weak point in terms of decoration is saw design. There are some parts that have saw design that incorporates the theme quite well. I can cite the first part and the last part as having really, really great saw design. Works very well with the theme. But specifically in the middle of the level, like the 30 to 70 stretch, the saws in those parts are pretty much just default GD objects, and it definitely stands out as these objects, these obstacles that are present throughout pretty much the whole level. Like, they just don't fit because they're not properly decorated. And I think this is something that would definitely be touched up over time in a future update, but it did definitely stand out to me as an area of improvement for the level. But yeah, the gameplay is quite fun. I don't have any gameplay critiques very, very enjoyable, as I would come to expect from Vayulena. I've enjoyed all of their levels pretty thoroughly, so would certainly recommend this one as a hard demon. And yeah, I hope that over time Vayulena is able to polish the level with some updates. I believe that is their intent, so I would expect that if it was fully polished, I would give this an epic send for sure. If I were a mod, I think that epic would make a lot of sense for a fully polished version of this level. As of right now, I'd probably abstain and wait for those updates, but I would say feature in its current state. If it gets updates, incorporating the theme a little bit better into certain transitions and polishing up the saw deco and maybe doing a bit of revamping of the prehistoric part, I think that an epic would certainly be fitting. But yeah, very fun level though. Would definitely recommend as an experience to play, and I hope this level does well in the Jam Attack contest. Yeah, GG's.